Hi, welcome back to the Barrel Proof Baseball Podcast. This is a big week. Really excited. We had on Monday, Dylan Nishaka came on, talk about his book. Today, we're joined by Rob Cooper, head baseball coach at Penn State. Friday, we've got a video about starting a bourbon collection. So really excited for that one too. First things first, let's get some business out of the way. Support for the Barrel Proof Baseball Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the absolute best in supporting your men's grooming needs. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools, and they obsess over their technology developments to provide you with the very best in men's grooming. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. As an exclusive offer to my listeners, Manscaped is offering 20% off plus free shipping when you use the code BPB at manscaped.com. Now, Manscaped hooked me up with their Perfect Package 3.0 kit, which includes their Lawnmower 3.0. This includes a ceramic blade to reduce any grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. This thing works. It's really cool. I've used it a couple times. I really like it. It works really, really well. It's got an LED light so you can trim in the dark. It's waterproof so you can trim in the shower. Or a dark shower, if the lights are off and you're taking a bath or something, whatever you guys do, you can use this if this is an appropriate time to cut hair, wherever. So that's an awesome product. It came with toner, smells nice. You give yourself a little spray with that, you're going to smell nice for quite some time. Next part came with is this deodorant. It's a anti-chafing deodorant, so it's perfect for you gentlemen after you do some trimming to help prevent that annoying chafing. It came with this nice nifty travel bag from Manscaped, and it also came with a pair of boxers that are super comfy. So check it out. Remember, 20% off, free shipping. Use the code BPB at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code BPB. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Second thing you can do, subscribe. Right now, while you're listening, while you're watching, go down, click subscribe. It's down to the right underneath the square where you see this. Okay, click subscribe. Third thing, Patreon. There's a link in the description box below. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, do it. It's basically a monthly membership. You can get a little bit of some goodies here and there. It just helps pay the bills, helps support the channel, and take care of some of the things that need to be taken care of from a financial standpoint. So if you're interested in helping out and supporting the channel in that way, check out the Patreon. You can get the Barrel Proof Baseball etched Glencairn glass as one of the levels. You can get a coin, a ceramic coin. It can be used as like a golf ball marker if you want. It could sit up on your shelf and look nice. But this one's cool. This one's for bourbon. It's got an American flag. This one's for Irish whiskey. I like this one better, I think. It's a little thicker, a little heavier. It's got writing along the side. I kind of dig that a lot. Wish I would have done that with the bourbon one, but I like this one. So check those out. Those are available for Patreon members, or if you'd like to just purchase them, shoot me an email, barrelproofbaseball@yahoo.com. So today's show, we are joined by Rob Cooper. Rob is the head baseball coach at Penn State. Incredible guy. Had a great conversation with him. I think you're really going to enjoy this. His history, his experience in baseball, his upbringing in baseball is really, really, it's surrounded by names that everybody in baseball knows. I'll just put it that way. He's played for, coached with, coached under some absolute legends of college baseball. So he has been surrounded by people his entire career that have been very successful. So there's no surprise that he's had the success he's had, given just the kind of person he is, given the people he's been around. Really, really enjoyed my conversation with him. It's just a really great baseball conversation over a couple of glasses of whiskey. And I'm definitely looking forward to the time that we can share a couple in person and probably have a couple more glasses of whiskey, because I feel like we could talk baseball for quite a while. So enjoy it. We talked a little whiskey at the end also, but the baseball conversation is outstanding. I think for any young coaches that may be watching this, I think you could pick up a lot of tidbits of information and advice from what Coach Cooper has to say. So take a look, leave some comments below, and let's wish Penn State best of luck this season. They open up this Friday, March 5th against Northwestern, and we will be following along and wishing them the best of luck. So here it is, Coach Rob Cooper. Welcome back to another edition of the Barrel Proof Baseball Podcast. Today we're joined by Penn State head baseball coach Rob Cooper. Coach, thanks so much for jumping on here with me tonight.
No, Tony, I appreciate it, man. Cheers. Anytime I can talk baseball and have a nice whiskey, I'm in heaven. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So I think we got through our technical difficulties that we were experiencing, but tell me a little bit about yourself outside of baseball or pre-baseball, and let's hear a little bit about you.
Well, so I actually grew up in Sacramento, California. I was lucky enough to, play junior college baseball at Sacramento City College for Jerry Weinstein. So that's kind of where I really got my education on baseball and coaching. It's where I got my first real love for wanting to be a coach. That and my high school coach was a huge influence on my life. I tell this to people all the time, and I know there's probably people like this for you too. The game brings so many great relationships into your life, and two of the closest and most important relationships in my life are my high school coach and my junior college coach. And my dad died when I was a freshman in high school, and he had been my little league coach. So at a time in my life where I'm, trying to learn what it means to be a man and kind of, chasing my own dreams in baseball and all that kind of stuff, I was fortunate. My high school coach and my junior college coach really took care of me. And so then I played at Sac City and had a chance to go to the University of Miami, went to the University of Miami, basically went there more or less to be a coach. To be honest with you, I played a little bit, but that's, not why they opened their doors to me, but was at the University of Miami and, was there for 3 years. Then I was fortunate enough to get an assistant coaching job at Wake Forest. I was there for a year. I met my wife. And then I was at Tulane University for 2 years. Got done, was coaching there, and then got an opportunity to come back to the West Coast and coached at Sac City for 5 years. And then was an assistant at Oral Roberts for 1 year and became the head coach at Wright State. And I was lucky enough to, do that for 9 years and really enjoyed my time there. My two boys basically grew up in Dayton. And then I got offered the opportunity to come to Penn State. It was a situation my wife and I and our family felt like we couldn't pass up, and now just trying to build this program, and hopefully the players can overcome the coaching and we'll be okay. But that's it's kind of a little bit of kind of my journey in this thing. I've been really fortunate to coach with USA Baseball, and it's funny. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody. I mean, again, the relationships that baseball brings you, but then just I look at the game of baseball, and I sit there and I think because of that ball with those red stitches, I met my wife. Because that ball, the red stitches, I've been to Holland. I went to Anne Frank's house. I've been to Japan. I've been to Taiwan. I've been to Rio de Janeiro. I met John McCain because of baseball. I got to shake Hank Aaron's hand. He almost broke it. He was so strong. But you just who knew that the game would bring you in contact with those kind of experiences and those kind of people. But that's what it's allowed me to do.
I was trying to read up on some of the some of the places that you've been, and I've come across these names like Jerry Weinstein. I mean, obviously a legend. Ron Frazier, was he there your last year in Miami?
So Coach Frazier was the one that basically made it so that I could go there, because Jerry had coached at Miami with Frazier. Mm-hmm. So he set it up for me to go there. Because again, I talk about what Jerry did for me. I was not, Tony, I wasn't a very good player. I was a smart player. But he asked, I was all set to go. My dad grew up on the East Coast, and I was going to go back East. I was going to go to Northeastern or Providence College or Hartford and play. And Jerry, I remember Jerry one day in practice saying, how serious about those places. I said, well, I'm going to get a little bit of money. I think I can play there and get a good education. And I like the East Coast. And he said, all right. He's like, yeah. He's like, come see me after practice. And again, to give you an idea of the type of player I was throwing batting practice in practice. Okay. But so anyway, I go in and I said, Skip, you wanted to see me? He turns around. He said, yeah. He goes, what would you think about going to the University of Miami? And I was just like, I thought one of our my teammates who was an All-American just walked in, and he goes, no, you. He goes, listen, those other schools are great opportunities for you if you want to do that. Totally support it. He's like, but I talked to the guys at Miami. They'll take you. I think you can go there and do similar stuff for us. You want to get into coaching, And I tell people all the time, like, if he had, if Jerry had just cared about me as what my stats were and whether or not I was one of the better players, he would never done. I was around Jerry Weinstein. I was around. So even though Ron Frazier wasn't the coach, I got to know him very, very well. Mm-hmm. Jim Morris, Rick Jones, Jim Schlossnagle and I worked together. Obviously Andy McKay, who I think is one of the best baseball guys I've ever met. He was the best man at my wedding. I was his best man. I'm blessed. I've been extremely fortunate to be around some really, really good coaches. And more importantly, the other coaches that they opened up, I remember going to a convention as a young coach and Jerry going, come on, we're going to go to lunch with Ray Tanner. And, you're sitting there talking to one of the game's best, just picking his brain. And that's something I never forget and don't take for granted.
That was my very first ABCA. I'll never forget. It was the same thing. It's like, you start to meet all these people who they're willing to, I don't want to say take you under their wing, but more or less willing to help out, introduce you to people, kind of get you in the flow of things. And my buddy from college that I played with, his dad was Gary Pollins, BYU for a long time. And Coach Pollins took us to dinner the first night with Ryan Strain, who's now the head coach at Metro State in Denver. It is the two of us and Coach Pollins and Dusty Rhodes. And we're sitting there chatting over dinner, and it was incredible. Just the stories those guys were telling. And then just over the years, going to more conventions and having that same thing happen, meeting people, running into people and having conversations with people like you never thought you would really be sitting down talking to, and they can leave an impact. I think that part's really cool. Yeah.
I can remember Andy McKay and I talk about this all the time still, going to conventions when we were, in junior college, and because we started going as players, we'd go area and then, but you walk in and you see these guys that are gods to you, Ron Polk and Ron Frazier and, Cliff Gustafson and Mike Martin and you're, and Augie Garrido. And, you're just like, these are the kind of guys, that's what I want to do. I want to be that guy, and again, I just remember so many of them being so welcoming. I mean, most of them were. I don't really remember anybody not being welcoming, but, it was cool.
I remember we were in, I think it was Chicago, and we ran into Augie Garrido and Ryan Strain actually had just got a grad assistant job at Nebraska, and he brought me a Nebraska hat or something. We're sitting at the bar enjoying ourselves, and Augie comes in and it's like, I'm going to go say hi to him. That's Augie Garrido, and I go to put my hand out to shake his hand, and he goes, take that off your head. Like, what? He goes, I'm not shaking your hand with that on your head. But he sat there for 15 minutes and just chatting with us. And same thing, Jim Morris, ran into him at a convention, chatted with him. One year we saw Tim Corbin and we started talking to him and sent him an email, after the weekend, and he writes an email right back and says, hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for taking the time to come up and say hi to me. I was like, well, that's a different level dude right there. Like, that's really cool.
And the thing about like Tim and all those guys, but I mean, like, that's not fake. Like, they're not doing that. That's authentic. Him sending that email to you is authentic. And it's part of what makes him who he is and how good he is, I'll tell you something that was really cool. So, there's one year where the convention was in Nashville, and I think it was probably maybe 5 years ago. So that was while I was at Penn State. And so I was like, I'll see if my younger son wants to go. And so my younger son's like, yeah, I want to go. So he went, and I remember walking through, that maze of a lobby at the Opryland Hotel and seeing Coach Garrido. And I'd been fortunate enough that, like, you said, I remember, so when I was a young coach at Miami, we had like a 5-day period where we weren't doing anything. And I said to Coach Morris and Coach and Jerry, I called Jerry and I said, hey, thinking about flying out to Southern California. Can you help set up meeting like for me to interview and watch practice at USC with Coach Gillespie, with Augie Garrido at Fullerton and Dave Snow. And I had met Dave Snow before at Sac City, but anyway, got to do that and spent the day with Augie, and he answered all my questions. And just so happened his assistant was George Horton, and and I just go back to that. So, fast forward to this convention, here's Augie Garrido walking through the lobby. And I was like, I'm going to make sure I introduce him to my son. I want my son to know who this is. And that was kind of a big deal. Like I wanted my younger son to go, hey, look, this guy right here is one of the reasons why college baseball is so great.
Yeah, that's no joke. And all those names you just listed off, it's funny because I grew up in Southern California. So we used to go to Long Beach State and see Dave Snow and see, the Fullerton teams in the late 90s with Mark Kotze and those guys. And I mean, that really, like, that era was what made me want to coach college baseball. And I was still in high school. I'm like, I really want to coach. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, maybe focus on the playing a little bit more and less on coaching. But I mean, that was such a fun era with those guys. And then their JUCO, like their roots in junior college baseball, with Snow and like Mike Gillespie and those guys.
And Wally Kincaid. So, one of the coolest things to this day is, so when I was coaching at Tulane, this is back when the regionals used to be 6 teams. Okay. And in that regional we were at LSU. So it was LSU. It was Cal State Fullerton. George Horton was the head coach. Serrano was his pitching coach, and Vanderhook was there. But anyway, it was LSU, Tulane, Fullerton, Nicholls State, Harvard, and Southeastern Louisiana. And so they used to do the banquets, and so we'd get there for the banquet, and, I'm sitting there and our volunteer coach at Tulane was a guy named Buddy Goldsmith, and Buddy was one of my Legion coaches. We grew up in the same town. He was older than me. I used to watch him play in high school. But anyway, when we needed a volunteer at Tulane, I had mentioned him to Rick Jones. He hired him. So we're sitting here in this banquet, and all of a sudden here comes Fullerton in, and all of a sudden you look, and there's Wally Kincaid. And Wally Kincaid is the volunteer coach for George Horton. And I was like, I don't get real, like geeked up. When I met John McCain, that's a war hero, right? Like I was like kind of speechless, but I was kind of like that with Wally Kincaid because, what he did for the game of baseball, and, he's just not, unless you're from California, unless you really know college baseball, you don't really know who he is. But like you said, I mean, he impacted so many coaches. It's crazy. Like you talk about a coaching tree, that man has like the most branches.
Yeah. And that tree coming down from Cerritos was insane.
Yeah, stupid.
I mean, it's nuts. It's funny. So was Skip Bertman still at LSU then?
Yeah. So Skip Bertman, again, George Horton, Rick Jones was the head coach at Tulane. Jim Pizzolato was the head coach at Nicholls State, and he's been working for the Boris Company for a long time. I mean, it was awesome. And you know how you're talking about back in the day when you're in high school and you go to those games, like I was in high school, growing up in Sacramento, on Sundays, I would get in the car and I would drive down to either Stanford or Cal, and whoever they were playing, I just sit there. And I remember seeing, Mike Messina pitch for Stanford. I remember seeing, John Zuber for Cal play. I remember, I remember watching Rodney Peete for USC, the quarterback, played in the NFL. I remember watching him come in and play for USC, and those are some of the best moments I ever had.
Yeah. When I was coaching junior college in Southern California, I was, trying to make extra money because we're making hundreds of dollars a year.
Yeah,
and so I went over, I was working at UCI and doing the scoreboard for their games. Yeah. And, towards the end of Mike Gillespie's career, and I will never forget a game. They were playing San Diego State, and they're down a run with 2 outs in the 9th. It's a 1-2 count. And this dude at the plate is just overmatched. And, I see the runner at first take 2 steps, fall down, runner at third takes off, and he scores. I'm like, this is 1-2 and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. Like that's a tying run. Next thing goes walk-off single and ball game. And I remember I got a chance to talk to Mike Gillespie about that, and he brought up the 1998 World Series against ASU, and when he had the stolen base with a 0-2 count, it was Morgan Ensberg stole home.
Yep.
And that, like, those guys coming out of the junior college ranks, they had so much time to spend learning the game and going through the game reps and just getting that experience, and the things that they see were just unreal. I mean, what a great era of coaching down there.
Well, I mean, look back in the day, man, people that don't realize what the Orange Empire Conference was in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, you're talking about Riverside and Cypress and Cerritos and Santa Ana, and just like, I mean, those guys were real, and then, you had Sac City up in the north, and, Steve Friend at Chabot always did a really, really good job and everything. San Jose City under Barry Woodhead, and then, Santa Rosa. But man, that Orange Empire, those are some battles.
Yeah, that was fun. I think that was my, like, learning to kind of cut your teeth, I guess, as a coach, and knowing, like you said, you have Dennis and Pick and Snedden and those guys that have been around for a long time. Is oh gosh, I can't remember his name at Saddleback before.
I can see him. I recruited
him too. I can see the Hawaiian shirt.
Golly, yeah. Every time you'd call him, his voice male would say mahalo. I love the guy. Oh gosh,
Jack Hodges.
Yeah, Jack Hodges.
Yeah, that was a good time down there. So off of that, you spent 11 years as an assistant coach, right? Mm-hmm. Or so, and with great coach. And by the way, I coached for 2 years at New Mexico with Buddy, so I know Buddy.
Oh yeah.
I love him to death. But he always had great things to say about Rick Jones and that just that era of being down there, and even. And it's funny that you brought up that regional, but he told me a story that he talked with, I think it was Skip Burtman after one of the games in that regional, and just those stories, you can't beat those. But from your experience, like going from being an assistant coach for as long as you were, and then getting that Division I head job, is that something that you were like really striving for? Going through the process of being an assistant, going from the Division I back to junior college at Sac State, and then back to Division I school at ORU, and then getting the opportunity to be a head coach. Is that something you had always kind of wanted?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely had a goal of becoming a head coach, and the thing that we always say, right? If I knew back then what I know now, and if I could go, I was very fortunate to be at the places I was at. And I think, like any young, naive, coach, you're looking at like, when can I be a head coach? When can I be a head coach? And so while I feel like I give my all at the places I was as an assistant, and while I enjoyed my time there, like I wish sometimes I could go back and tell myself, hey, relax. As Tim Corbin says, the game's going to reward you on its time. And, it's funny because the Wright State job just kind of happened out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't even in the mix. I had a friend of mine, Dave Gruey, who was an assistant at Notre Dame, and we were watching games together and got to be friendly. And he was like, hey, I'm looking at this job at Wright State. You know anything about it? I was like, no, I don't. And he was telling me a little bit about it. Well, make a long story short, he ended up, going through it, but then it's like, I'm not ready to leave Notre Dame. And he's like, you should get involved in this thing. I was like, everybody called him Red. I was like, Red, I don't know anybody there. They don't know who I am. I mean, and plus I was at Oral Roberts. I had a great job working for Rob Walton. And he's like, well, they asked me to give them some names of some people if people I thought would be good. So he called the person running the search, his name's Bob Grant, who's now the athletic director at Wright State. And Bob's like, we kind of have our candidates set. We're a little bit down the road here, but since he's a friend of yours, he's like, have him call me. So I was like, all right. I called him and we talked, had a good talk. And he's like, can you do a phone interview tomorrow? I said, sure. So I did a phone interview the next day, and it went really, really well. He's like, well, let me talk to our AD, because at the time he wasn't the AD. And he called me back later that night. This is a true story. He called me back later that night and just said, hey, Rob, like, I really enjoyed getting to know you. I wish we'd gotten this thing going earlier. He's like, my AD kind of feels like we've got too many guys. We're too far down the road. And he's like, but you know, you never know how this stuff works, you know? And I said, hey, Bob, no problem. Cause I'm happy where I'm at. I'm good. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation. That was it. 2 weeks later, I just dropped my wife and kids off at the airport because they were going to fly out to California to see my family. And I had to stay and recruit. I'm going through a Chick-fil-A drive-through and I get a call from Bob Grant saying, hey, you remember when I said, you never know how this, and he just said, I can't get that phone call out of my mind. And that, like, literally, like, when that's how it happened. And, you know, I'm blessed that it did, because we had a great experience at Wright State and coached some unbelievable kids. But, you know, kind of, again, to go back to your question, yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. I love being up to, and I'm not perfect. I mean, I love being able to try to make a positive impact on young people like my coaches did for me. But again, if I could go back, I would kind of tell myself to chill out a little bit, you know, and just enjoy where you're at that moment. And I did, but I could have done a better job of it.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that can sneak up on you. Because you think about, I mean, everybody wants to be a head coach, you know, and you have to go through that process. And, you know, having been at different Division I school, and not only that, like, I know at Oral Roberts that year, you guys won like 50 games. You were really good.
We were really good. And the guys we had were great kids and hard. I mean, they were hard nosed. They weren't afraid of anybody. I mean, Rob Walton can really, really coach. Ryan Fulmer, who's the head coach there, was an unbelievable coach. But like, one of the greatest weeks I've ever experienced in college baseball was at Oral Roberts. We went to Wichita State, and they were really good. They were ranked in the top 20 at the time. They had just come off a weekend series where they took 2 out of 3 from, I think, Long Beach at the time. And we went in there and beat them at their place. And then, and that's not an easy drive from there to Tulsa. We got back to Tulsa. We had to get up early the next morning. We flew out to Arizona State, and they were really good. And I think they were in first place in the pack. Yes, they had the shortstop by the name of Dustin Pedroia, who was, you know, obviously had a decent future. And we took 2 out of 3 from them. Like, they don't even know where we're from, but we take 2 out of 3 from them. We get back late Monday night, and we have to go to Arkansas on Tuesday, who had just come off of their ranked, and they come off of, you know, taking 2 out of 3 from somebody, and we beat them in extra innings. And it, you know, it's just, but like, to that team, like, those guys weren't fazed by any of it. It was like, oh yeah. And I mean, just, you know, it was a walk in the park, and it was something I'll take to my grave, those experiences with those guys.
That's incredible. I mean, first of all, whoever scheduled that week, you know, it could have gone very differently.
Yes.
but what, I mean, how cool is that to be able to look back on that, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I think right now it's a weird time in baseball in a lot of different areas, I think. And, you know, I see a lot of guys really trying to push themselves into positions to be, you know, full-time Division I coaches or head coaches or getting into pro ball, and maybe, you know, skipping out on getting some of that experience and going through the good and the bad and like the ups and downs, and knowing how you're going to handle those bad times, because they're not always going to be good. Like, you're going to have weeks where things aren't going so well. And I think rushing that process could definitely be detrimental for guys, even if they do get in, you know, and having skipped that process.
Well, and I'll 100% agree with that. But I would also even tell you that, you know, when people ask me what's the best advice you can give me, like guys that get jobs, if they call me and say, hey, I'm first time head coach, what advice would you give me? And I tell them, I'm like, everything that you know to be true, that you believe in as a coach, you're going to doubt at some point this year, because, you know, the wins and losses go by your last name. You know, all the stuff comes across your desk, you know, all the issues, all the problems. So you're going to doubt it. Like, you're going to be like, I know this works. I've seen it work. I know it, but you're going to doubt it. And, you know, you just got to stick with it. I think, you know, if you believe in your process and you're treating the kids right, and you are, you know, committed to getting them better and doing it for the right reasons, then the process is going to reward you. It's going to play out, you know, and look, I'll be the first one to say, I mean, if you look at, you know, take last year out of it, because we were off to a really good start, but the 3 previous years, we haven't been very good here. And, I definitely made some mistakes, and it's definitely been some things I've had to kind of step back and not even go, okay, I can't do that anymore. It was more of, I really need to get back to what I'm doing. Going from Wright State to here, I got away from some of the things that I really believed in because I felt like of where we're at, we could do that. And, when you do that, you're not being authentic to yourself. And if you're not authentic to yourself, well, your players are going to see right through that. So, I think that we all love to talk to coaches when things are going great, but, what do you do when you're not? It seems like you're trying everything you've tried in the past. It's not working. Well, again, I trust me, I know this firsthand. For me, it's reevaluate it. If you believe in what you're doing, if you know you're doing it for the right reasons, you're treating the kids right, then you got to double the process. Can't abandon it.
How hard is that? Like, having been an assistant for 11 years and been around really good coaches and coached with really good coaches also, not just the head guys that you were working with, but the other coaches that you're around. Like, how hard is that? And what is day one like? Like, you finally get that Division I job. I have to imagine it's hard walking in there. You've got your first meeting with your team, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to be like this, big mixture of everybody I've ever been around. Or how do you fix up and just try and be you when you finally get that job?
So first of all, it's like drinking water through a fire hose a little. You're definitely trying to make sure that you're not missing something. But, I think the biggest thing for me was I just tried to really be myself. And again, that's why I say I think I got away from being that when I got here, and just felt like it would translate over. But now, even though I was like that first team meeting with your guys, like, you dream about that first speech your entire time coming up as a coach. Sure. But then the work really kicks in after that. I mean, you're still undefeated, and so then after that, that's when the work starts kicking in. And now that doesn't mean that, again, you doubt what you do a lot. And, I think probably one of the things that really, the most significant moments that really kind of sticks with me is, so it's our second year at Wright State. So Greg Lovelady, the head coach of Central Florida, was my assistant my entire time there. And then when I left, he took the program over and took it to even higher heights. And then he left, and now Jeff Mercer, who played for us, was the head coach. Now he's the head coach in Indiana and beats up on his old coach, when we play him. But I'll never forget. So in our first year, we were 7-1 in conference to start the conference. And we had just taken 3 out of 4 from UIC, who had been the bully on the block. And I remember saying to the team, hey, like, this, I can't remember exactly. I think I might've said something to the effect of, I'm really proud of you. This is the last time that Wright State baseball is under 500, and we lost the next 10 games in a row. And at the time, I'm just like, but what I was like, what's going on here? But then when I really look back on it, they weren't ready to handle, it's one thing when you're not winning, nobody expects anything from you. Don't expect anything from yourself, and so, if you win a game, great. If you lose a game, whatever. But then when you start winning, as we all know, there's expectations of you. And then how do you handle those things? And they weren't ready. And I completely missed that, but what really sticks out to me is but one thing I will say is I felt like Coach Lovelady and myself, we really kept coaching them from a standard standpoint that first year, as though we had a chance to win a championship that year. Now, we weren't ready, and we didn't. But the next year we stayed with it, and we won our conference tournament. And I'm convinced that because as coaches, we didn't come in and go, all right, well, we're going to wait until we have our guys to coach them. Like, we started coaching them at the standard right away, that it allowed those guys to start believing. We got hot in the conference tournament and we won it. And that was kind of the takeoff point. But where it really kind of kind of a light bulb moment for me, I guess, was we're in the regional. We're in Corvallis. This is the first year that Oregon State wins the College World Series. Pat Casey's in the other dugout, one of the best guys in our game, and smart, and built that program. But it's a tie game. I mean, we're actually up. We're actually up by a run in like the 8th inning. And Joe Smith, who's pitched in the big leagues now for 13 years, is pitching for us. And he, the inning before, one of our guys hits a ball that Jacoby Aylesbury brings back in the ballpark. And then they have a runner at second, third, bottom of the 8th, 2 outs. We're up by a run. And, on video, it looks like he punches them out, but we're not the home team. They call it a ball. And the next one, Darwin Barney just flips the ball over the second baseman said they get the go ahead run. They hold us in the 9th. But I remember in like the 7th inning of that game, looking over, I made sure to take a moment and just go, all right, enjoy the fact that you're here. Right. And I remember looking over at Coach Casey, and I want to make sure I'm very clear in saying this. I am nowhere close to being in his league, but I remember going, our team's going toe to toe with his team. I can do this. Just be yourself, and when I start doubting myself, I try to go back to that moment.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I think everyone's kind of, I don't know if everyone's had that moment. I mean, I think if you have, it's such a good moment to go back to. We did it when we were at New Mexico, and we had, we lost like a 33-8 game against Dallas Baptist, and then we went at home during the season. Then we beat them during the regional, and then we got Texas Tech at home, which is not a fun place to play.
No.
And we're beating them. We're up a run in the 9th or in the bottom of the 8th or whatever it was. And, end up losing a tight game by I think a run. And it's kind of that moment where you're like, man, we can hang, like we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they got dudes like those guys. They have real dudes,
Yeah.
they're throwing out these monsters that we weren't close to that, but we had guys that could play. And I have to imagine as a head coach, that moment of that clarity going, hey, like we're doing okay. Like that's a good thing to be able to go back to.
Yeah. And what's even when you're saying that is the first thing that comes to my mind is my first year at Wright State. And I had made the decision when I got the job there, knowing that the Horizon League was a one bid league. And the only way we were going to get the tournament is if we won our own tournament. So my administration was fine with us scheduling, big time programs and playing them and getting bloodied up and competing and learning. And so when I get the job, we have an open weekend, and Arizona State has an open weekend. And so we go out there, and now you got to understand that, Greg Lovelady won 2 national titles as a player at Miami and coached at Miami. He used to go to the World Series, used to play in big programs. Same thing with myself. And so we go out there and we land in Tempe. We take the guys to get some lunch. We go to check into the hotel, and I put my stuff in my room, and my mom and my sister were going to be flying in later from Sacramento, and they were going to stay at our hotel. And all I wanted to do, I was going to the front desk just to make sure, hey, is there a room set? I can grab the keys from them, blah, blah, blah. So I walk out, and I go by the pool outside, and our entire team, shirts off, swimsuits, in the pool. And I remember seeing Love and Love going, and I'm like, I want this to play out. Let this play out. And I don't know why I thought that. I mean, I'm burning up inside, but I'm like, well, we're going to let this play out. So we have practice that night. We head over, and I get in the dugout. I put my stuff in the dugout, and I pin up the practice schedule, and I turn around, and like almost every single one of our guys is videoing the yard, taking pictures by the numbers retired of the big leaguers. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And we get absolutely destroyed the next day. I mean, it's not even competitive. It's men versus boys. Talk to them a little bit about it. The next day, it's even worse. And it got to the point where like one of our kids was like almost in awe, kind of giggling. And that I didn't sit well with me. And so after the game, I can remember distinctly, and I didn't say it this calmly, but I remember us talking about, listen, guys, this isn't a vacation. Like, we didn't come out here for you to sit by the pool, take pictures. Like, you guys all came in here and took pictures of retired numbers and all this kind of stuff. Like, I know they're good, but like, the greats of Arizona State, like Barry Bonds isn't playing against us today, and so that was kind of the wake up a little bit. And then the next year, we finish out the year, we get a little bit better, but the next year we go to TCU and they're ranked and we beat them in the first game. And that was kind of and then later that year we beat Notre Dame when they were ranked and then we got in the regional. And then, after that we broke through we beat Virginia when they were ranked number 1 and Georgia when they were ranked number 1. And now when you play Wright State, like, they don't care. They're not afraid to play. But, it took time. It took time. So
so you were there for 9 years, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Went to three regionals.
Yep.
So, I remember my first year played at the University of Nevada, and my freshman year we went to a regional, went to Stanford. We were good, and they'd been the year before. Mm-hmm. I think they'd gone like 4 out of the last 6 years or something. And, I'm thinking at the time as a freshman, like, this is cool. I like this. We should do this more often. and we never went back. And that was in 2000. And that was the last time Nevada's gone to a regional. And then, I got a chance in 14 when I was at UNLV. And then I think 16 when I was at New Mexico. And I think it's something that, you see it on TV and it looks cool and everything. But like you said, there's a lot of leagues, the Mountain West, the Horizon League, that are going to be one bid leagues that are not as easy as, it's not as easy as it would appear to be to get into the postseason. I mean, you've been to Omaha too, right? With Miami.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What is that like? I mean, getting that postseason, how does that help, like, with the team, the returners the next year, and then like your experience in Omaha?
So before I talk about like Omaha, I mean, some of the things I'm most proud of watching a team do, because I don't do it, but as one bid leagues, you can be hands down the best team in the I mean, down, not even close, but that's the beautiful thing about our sport. Another team gets hot, you play bad for a couple, one weekend, and your season ends, right? And so to see our guys stay focused, really buy into the mental game and things like that, was something I always took a lot of pride in watching them do it. I was in awe of them, because that's not easy when people are shooting for you and everything. But I'll never forget, man. I mean, going to Miami, it was, it's Jim Morris's first year there, and we beat Florida to go to the College World Series. And I just remember, on the bus, we're on the bus and we're heading from the hotel to Rosenblatt to practice. And Rosenblatt used to be up on this hill. And I remember coming around the corner and you look up and on the hill, the bus went silent. I mean, it just went silent. And I get chills thinking about it. It's like, you're watching it on TV all the time, and then boom, there it is. And it was an unbelievable experience. And I was lucky enough to go twice. And I loved it so much that I have not been back. I told myself that as long as I'm coaching, I won't go unless I'm lucky enough to go again with the team. Now, what's really kind of cool about it is, so when my wife and I first got married and we moved to Sacramento, and I'm coaching in Sac City, she worked for the Pac-10 at the time. It was the Pac-10. And she was the baseball liaison and champ. And so like to this day, man, if I talk to Pat Casey or I talk to Dave Esker or I talk to, any of those guys that were in the Pac back then, they all are like, how's Mo? That's my wife's. Everybody calls him Mo. How's Mo? They don't care about me. I mean, Gillespie, rest his soul. I would talk to him. He'd always be like, you guys got to come out here and play, but you better bring Mo. That's just that, so, and she, when she oversaw the baseball, I want to say Stanford and maybe it was Cal. I can't remember, but anyway, she went. She's like, yeah, this is unbelievable, and so yeah, it's a special deal, and I think, it's part of the reason why, so full disclosure, my dad grew up in New England, so I'm a Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Bruins guy, but part of the reason why I'm a big fan of the Patriots is because of to go to the Super Bowl as many times as they did, to then win it. It's hard enough to win a championship at any level. They don't just hand them out. And then to do what they did, or to do what the Spurs did, or to do what Brady's done, or do what the Dodgers have done the last 3 years. It's crazy to me that all of a sudden now everybody's like, oh yeah, Dave Roberts is a great manager. Dave Roberts was a good man. Was a great manager prior to. Yeah. Okay? I mean, and anybody that's around him for 5 minutes knows that, it's not easy. And so to be able to experience those kind of things, and I think this is important as a coach, is that it's because you have really good players, and it's because they buy in and they make the choice and they make the sacrifice, and it's your job to help them see that. But I think that, I think that there's some coaches out there that get carried away with their importance, and it's not. It's the players. We all know that.
Yeah, and it's
Mookie Betts makes Dave Roberts look a lot better.
Yeah,
and Dave Roberts will be the first one to tell you that.
It's so funny. I never forget. We were it was at a convention. We're talking with Ed Sheff.
Yeah,
and man, Lewis and Clark. I mean, those guys were so good.
Yes,
and we were talking to him about hitting. We're just sitting around chatting with him, and the head coach Kent Madole, our head coach at Irvine Valley. He says, he's like, Coach, what do you guys do, man? Like, you guys are so good with hitters. Like, what do you do? And he just looks him dead straight in the face. He goes, recruit good hitters. Yeah, man. Like, we do. We give ourselves a lot of credit. And I think it's like, man, those guys are the ones out there doing the work, and they're putting in the work, dealing with the ups and downs. And like, those guys are the ones that deserve the credit,
So, Tony, we had this joke when I was at Wright State and Joe Smith was pitching for us. And again, the guy's been so this is a great story. I tell this story all the time because it's just so cool. I mean, Joe, in high school, Joe had to have labrum surgery. So he was a really good basketball player. He thought he was going to play basketball at some D2 schools and stuff. But everything kind of fell apart, and baseball coaches stopped recruiting him. And he had a buddy that was going to Wright State. And so he kind of talked to Coach Nischwitz at the time. This is the coach before me. And Coach Nischwitz was like, oh, yeah, this is before they had roster limits. Yeah, you know what? We'll let you try out. Well, his arm wasn't ready yet. And they cut him, and so then the next year, sorry, I got my dog is barking. I apologize. But so the next year, he goes back out and makes the team. And he actually, if you look at the stat sheet the year before I got there, like, he was the only one with a sub-3 ERA, but he was an over-the-top righty, 6'1", at the time, 84 to 86. But he could pitch. Like, he was smart. He was competitive. He could spin a breaking ball. And so, I just remember we're going along in the fall, and Love and I both being at Miami, we had sidearm closers. We had Jay Tesmer, who pitched in the big leagues, that was a sidearmer. And Love said, hey, man, what would you think about us just seeing if trying to drop some guys down and see what they're doing? I was like, yeah, we got to, because we had some guys that just probably weren't going to pitch a whole lot. So if a guy could give us an inning down there, great, let's try it. Well, Joe is the type of kid, man now, but he's the type of guy that if you said, Joe, you couldn't be a defensive back and cover those guys in the NFL, he'd be like, yeah, I can. And not like he would seriously believe it. Like, and he's a freak athlete. Like, he could dunk two-handed. But at the time, his body looked like mine. He didn't work as hard as he possibly could. And anyway, I remember Love's working with guys down the bullpen, dropping them down. And I guess Joe walks up and Joe says, I can do that. And Love's like, what? I don't care. Like, he's like, you're not a guy we're going to have do it. And he gets up there and just messing around. And all of a sudden Love comes running down. He's like, Coop, you got to come see this. Go down there. And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and again, it's probably 82 to 84, but I was like, hey man, if you were going to throw a slider, like what would it look like? And he throws his Frisbee slider, and all of a sudden he's like realizing that we're going to ask him to do this. And he puts the ball down and he's like, I'm not doing that. Like he was just screwing around. And I mean, I had to have a meeting with him and his dad where I was like, listen, I said, just give me an honest effort of this. He's like, I'm never going to get drafted doing that. I said, Joe, you're 85 miles an hour, 6'1". You're not going to get drafted doing that. Give me an honest effort with this. You have a chance to be a difference maker. If at the end of this year it doesn't work, we'll pitch it. Sure enough, he does it. And that Arizona State trip I was telling you about, we got him in the 8th inning on that Saturday game. We were getting blown out, but we got him in the game. And he was really good. And I remember Pat Murphy after the game going, hey, man, wait, this is back when you could have transfers anytime. And I've known Murph for a while. Murph goes, what do you got on that guy? And I'm like, kind of explaining. He's like, well, I need to find you another job so I can steal him from Wright State. And I was like, yeah, he's good. Whatever. Well, then the next day we show up to the ballpark and there's a scout there. And he's like, hey, what do you got on Smith? And I'm like, yeah, he's pretty good. And he's like, Coach, that's the best one inning guy I've seen this side of the Rockies all year. And I was like, you mind me asking what was he on the gun? He's like, he didn't throw a pitch under 91. And that's down low, right? And you can tell he'd been getting better. Anyway, because it's so late, they couldn't get cross-checkers in. He doesn't get drafted, so he comes back and has an unbelievable year. His ERA is like a .68. And he gets drafted in like the 96 pick overall by the Mets. And literally, when he signs 12 months, or I take it back, 10 months later, but he makes the big league team out of spring training. And he's like, he calls Love and I, he's like, hey, I'm breaking camp with the team. We're going to St. Louis. So we drive to St. Louis. And we looked it up on the calendar. 12 months prior, he was pitching against Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Wow.
And that night he came in the game. The Cardinals had done their ring ceremony because they had won the World Series, and he faced Pujols, Eckstein, and Preston Wilson. And you're just like, but that's the kind of stuff that is really, really cool. And now, I always give him a hard time because, he's got 13 years in the big leagues, and, he's doing great. And I always say, yeah, remember when you didn't want to trust us and go down there? And I know. But here's the thing about him. He's so competitive and everything that he probably would have made it to the big leagues up here once he got healthy and everything. But
incredible.
It really is. It's cool. But that's what's cool about our game.
Yeah. I think those kind of stories, I mean, those are priceless. I mean, like there's a lot of good things. There's your good stories, your feel good stories, your bad stories, the guys that didn't quite pan out, but it's always cool seeing a guy that's going to trust in the process and trust in trying something new and like putting his trust in you and it working out for him. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So things are going well at Wright State. Penn State comes up, you get an opportunity to go there. And I mean, again, I have to imagine, you left a program that hadn't had a lot of success before you got there. And then you guys are in 3 regionals, and then you go to Penn State and you've got some, rebuilding more or less to do. What is that transition like going from like that mid-major in the Horizon League to now you're in a Power 5 and there's going to be some resources. And now you take that high school kid to a Saturday night whiteout game at Happy Valley. And that's probably a little bit different feel.
Yeah, I tell you what, man. I'm a lot better recruiter here than I was at Wright State. Yes, I mean, but so a couple things. One, my wife and I, my kids and I, we loved Wright State. We were happy in Dayton. My kids had grown up there basically because when we moved there from Oral Roberts, my oldest son was 3, my youngest son was 1. My wife was the senior associate athletic director when we left Wright State. So we were happy, and I had been offered some jobs. I've been offered some jobs in California that would have brought me closer to my family, and they weren't right. Like they were good places, but they just didn't have everything. For me, it was like, and my wife, because my wife's a big is, when I say like, we coached here, we were there. That's how I look at it. I mean, she's, she's the reason why I'm able to do things the way I do it. And she's also the daughter of a college and NFL football coach. And so she's been in college athletics her whole life. And I mean, she's the smartest person I've ever met. I mean, and she's also brutally honest. Like, I'll never forget, we're on the bus coming back. We just lost to Miami, Ohio. We hadn't been playing well. And we're on the bus, and I call her, and I'm like, she goes, "Yeah, tough one," and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I can't get these guys going. I don't know what I'm doing." And she goes, "You'll figure it out." I'm like, "I hope so." And she goes, "Hope is not a fucking game plan. Just figure it out. You'll be fine." Like, but the thing about it is she was right. Like, I was feeling sorry for myself, but anyway, so when Penn State came along, we were looking at it. We're like, I wanted to be somewhere where the university and the athletic department believe in the student athlete. I can't over recruit. I mean, we're not a place where I can sign 20 guys and then tell them, 2 days before school, "Hey, sorry, we don't have your money." And I that's important to me. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. I'm not a higher moral person than anybody else. It's just that, again, I go back to, if I had coaches that just cared about my production, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Like, I wouldn't get the opportunity. So if we make a commitment to somebody, I want to be able to fulfill it. So Penn State, the Big Ten, we can't over recruit. We can't take a guy's scholarship away. And then I do believe that in this conference, and Michigan proved it, and Indiana's done well, that if you recruit the right kids, and we've got great facilities, we're only making them better, that we can be a nationally prominent program and do it right. And then, my wife and I also looked at each other and said, and this is at a time where I didn't know if our boys would be good enough to play at this level. My oldest is on our team now. My youngest will be on it next year. But we're like, they're going to get Penn State degrees, so there were so many things that went into it. Now, when I said to you earlier, that I made some mistakes. So when I got here, everything you just said, I mean, there were programs and coaches that wouldn't give me the time of day at Wright State. Now, all of a sudden, they're calling and, "Hey, we got guys for you," and this and that. And because we hit the ground running, recruiting, and we're, kind of generating a buzz. And yeah, guess what? When you bring them into a house of 107,000 fans going nuts, like, it's pretty easy to recruit that way. Plus, you're offering a world-class education, and so, you're talking about 700,000 living alums. So when these, like, Tony, every single one of my seniors usually has a job lined up at this time of year before they graduate in June. Like, already have it, right, in their number one choice. So there's a lot of good things and this is where I made a huge mistake. So look, this isn't anything earth shattering. Culture and toughness win anywhere. Whether you're at a California JUCO, whether you're at New Mexico, Penn State, Wright State, Miami, toughness and culture win everywhere. And where I made a mistake was because of the buzz we were getting guys that were ranked. We were getting guys that we would never have been in the door with at Wright State. And we took some of those guys and kind of overlooked some of the other things. And one of the biggest things that I learned is all those things about Penn State that make it so awesome to recruit to. You better make sure you're getting a kid that really loves to play and wants to be a part of something good, really, really special. Because if that kid's struggling or that kid is not doing well, oh, well, like, I'm still playing D1 baseball. I am going to, I'm getting a world-class education. I'm going to be set up with a job after I graduate. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to the best football games in the country. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for them to just kind of settle and not push themselves. And again, that's everywhere. That's not just, but that's the biggest mistake I made. And it's taken us a while to get the culture back. And that's why, last year we were in a really good spot with some really good figuring it out. And obviously for multitude of reasons, losing the season last year, stunk for everybody. But I like where we're at right now with the culture. And so while I wish I could have pushed a fast forward button to speed it up, and it's taken longer than I had hoped, I believe in what we're doing. Got to stay with it.
That's awesome, man. I love that. It's so true. I mean, it's going to win. Culture wins. Toughness wins. You can't be soft. You can't have a weak culture. You can't have weak people within the culture that don't contribute to the culture, because then it doesn't run. It doesn't work. But
the other thing, Tony, I'll say is that, again, you got to be authentic to yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got here, I tried to be more of a CEO coach. I mean, I have good assistants. Like, so it was not that I didn't want to give them stuff, but like I got into coach to coach, I got into coaching to coach, and I like doing that. And I got away from that a little bit. And now I'm back in there doing more. And I'm still letting my assistant coaches coach and giving them stuff to do. I mean, that was one thing. All those guys you mentioned that I got to work with, they basically, like, I remember Rick Jones saying to me, "Hey, listen, here's the deal. You're the head coach of the hitters and you're the head coach of the infielders. Okay. We better hit and we better play defense." That's fine. That's all I needed to know. But so, I got away from what was authentic to me and my style of coaching.
It's you said a couple of interesting things that we could probably talk about forever, and it'll go down a different path. But like the uniform change is a big deal. You go from Wright State, and now all of a sudden you're at Penn State, and you're getting some different types of phone calls about different types of kids. And I've seen it with guys that have moved on from mid majors into pro ball, and they may be new, but that uniform change on your Twitter profile tends to give a little bit different credibility, and it may not even necessarily be warranted, in the sense that, like, you're no better than you were before. It's different opportunity. And then the scholarship thing. I mean, I think it's really interesting about with the early commits right now, and I'm sure it's difficult from a recruiting perspective with how early these kids are being recruited. It's got to be a challenge, I have to imagine.
Yeah, it's one of the things about our game right now I do not like at all. Yeah. And while we will still get involved with some kids that are younger, we are really pulling back. I mean, for us to really get involved with a guy that is say finishing his freshman year and is, hasn't begun his sophomore year, we have to really know the family. We have to have a really good connection. We have to really feel good that this kid is going to continue to get better. Because I think that's also where we made some mistakes. Sure. And I go back to this, we had a conversation about this with our coaching staff, and what really opened my eyes to it is so I've been fortunate over the last 4 years, my boys were in the heart of the tournaments that we had to recruit at. So I would follow them around and not kill two birds with one stone. Well, I remember following my youngest son around, and, most of the kids, because my son is really young for his grade. And so he's playing with guys that, were just finishing their freshman year. And I'm watching these kids, and all these kids are committing. And I remember coming back and just going to my staff and say, "Hey, again, look, unless we've got a great connection, unless we really feel strong, unless we really get the family," I said, "I'm done having us follow 14-year-olds around." I said, "I'm done." Now, there's other programs that are all in on that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's their choice. But my point to our staff is, I sit here and I go back and I think of some of the best players I've ever coached. One of the best players we ever coached at Wright State was a kid named Garrett Gray, who graduated from high school and 3 weeks later still had nowhere to go. And I watched him play in a tournament, and he became a 4-year starter, like right out of high school. I look at, guys that were like that, at Wright State. I've looked at some of the kids that we added late here that have been good players. And so finally I just told my staff, I said, "Listen, here's a couple things. One, I think we'll have a better feel for who they are as a person individually. They've actually driven a car. They've actually gone on a date. Hopefully, they've done some stuff. Two, we have a better idea of who they are physically, rather than, 2 years prior.
Projecting.
And the other thing too is, like we have a kid on our team that finished his junior year. We went and saw him play. And this kid, good player. Like, he kind of reminds me of Paul O'Neill as a hitter, and he's up to 87 off the mound as a lefty, and he just bloomed later. Everybody develops later than times, right? And so, we offered him, and so going back to, instead of having to offer him 50, 60% as a freshman, we offered him what we thought was fair. He was pumped, and so we're kind of going back to the old school way of doing it. We're going to miss some guys because of it, but we're going to get some guys because of it.
Sure. Yeah, I think we could probably talk about the recruiting stuff forever. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I would probably need an entire bottle of whiskey for that.
I believe it. Yeah. It's a lot right now, but I mean, yeah, we'll leave it there. But I do want to ask. So Team USA, you mentioned your coaching stints with Team USA, 2007 with Mike Weathers, right? Mike Weathers has been unbelievably kind to me back when I knew him back in, God, it's been probably 10 years since I've seen him, but he was always really great to me. Really enjoyed getting to know Coach Weathers. 07, 09, Brazil, Netherlands. I mean, some cool places. You mentioned when we talked before about, you taking your team at school to Cuba, and then you've got another upcoming trip. Would you talk a little bit about your Team USA experience and some of those other trips for school?
Well, so I'm glad you brought up Mike Weathers, because I think this is a cool story and something that a lot of coaches can learn from. So my introduction to Mike Weathers was through Dave Snow. So, Dave Snow recruited Sac City. He was staying with Jerry Weinstein. He was coming over, and an assistant coach was living at Jerry's house. And it was like 6 a.m. Jerry was notorious for, we're practicing at, 7:30 in the morning, right? Get up early and blah, blah, blah. So this assistant coach, Dan Gilmartin, is leaving the house, and Snowman and J-Dub are drinking coffee, and Snowman goes, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going to hit Coop ground balls." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to hit him ground balls." He wants early work. And so, like, that blew Snow away. Like, you got a kid that's getting up at 6 a.m. before, an 8-hour practice day, basically. And that's just how Andy McKay, myself, and all of us were. It wasn't just me. But I'll never forget that, Snowman really liked that. And he liked how I played as far as energy and hustle. I wasn't a good player. But I think I had a little bit of that dirtbag in me, that they were building. Fast forward to 1992. Well, in 1992, Jerry's an assistant coach on the USA team with Ron Frazier and Dave Snow. And I had asked Jerry, I was like, "Hey, if I pay my own way, can I come out and watch what you guys do and hang out?" So I went out to Millington, Tennessee for like a week and just hung out. And so Jerry let me go wherever. And at the same time, Ron Frazier had stepped down from Miami, and I'm all set to go to Miami. But we didn't know at the time that Brad Kelly was going to be the coach. And so there was, hey, maybe this isn't going to work out for me, depending on who becomes the coach. And Dave Snow said, "Hey, why don't you come be a dirtbag? Come be here. Like, I want you here." And so we always kept in touch. Well, then when I was at Tulane, we went out and played Long Beach, and I was the hitting coach, and we had a great weekend. Like, we really swung the basketball. We had a great group of guys that really bought in, and they could really hit, and they were super competitive. And, it was Sunday getaway day, and our guys are showering, and as they're coming out of the locker room outside, I'm handing them their box lunch to get on the bus, and Mike Weathers comes up, and we're talking, and he's like, "What do you do with your hitters?" He's like, "I've never seen a team adjust from pitch to pitch, game to game like your guys do." And I said, "Well, Mike, this is a really good group. I mean, they slow the game down. They do this." I said, "But," he goes, "Well, do you do anything?" I said, "Well, we do this one drill, and it's just we get about the same distance you do when you do front toss, but we bounce tennis balls, and I vary up the speed of it, the height that forces them to hold their ground, all this kind of stuff." And he goes, "Can you show it to me?" So we went in the cages, and I showed it to him. So he started doing it. Well, they ended up getting hot and going to the World Series that year. And it's just funny, like, every time we would ever see each other after that, he'd always be like, "I'm still doing the tennis ball. I'm still doing the tennis ball." And then when I was coaching at Sac City, and I know this is a long answer, but it's just it's a Mike Weathers deal, man. He's just the best. And so, he becomes the head coach. Dave Snow steps aside and he becomes the head coach. And, I call him up and I said, listen, you probably have a million guys in mind, but if you have any interest, I'd love to interview for the job, for your assistant job. He said, seriously? I said, yeah. And so he brought me down. Well, and he's like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of have already somebody in mind, but yeah, let's at least do this, And so we do it and go through the process and get done. And he calls me up and he's like, man, this is really tough. He's like, I gotta be honest with you. I had this thing all planned out. I'm hiring a guy that played for me that I know, but you really made me stop and reconsider that. And he's like, so I hope, we'll still be friends. I said, I call him Skip. And I'm like, Skip, you and I are always going to be close. You treated me right. You were honest, blah, blah. So I say that to you because then come in 2007, he becomes the head coach and he gets to say who he wants as his assistants for the USA team. And he, asks for me to be one of them. Well, I share this story with coaches because you never want to burn a bridge, man. Mm-hmm. I could have been a real immature guy and, been like, oh, screw you. But he was awesome. He was honest about it. It was a great experience for me. And then, so I just wanted to say that because he's one of my mentors, man. I love that guy. But yeah, man, the game of baseball, I got to go to Cuba, with Penn State. We played against their pro teams, the Industriales, the Yankees of Cuba. We played against them before Major League Baseball went back. We got to play.
You guys were like the first team to be able to go down there since the negotiations or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, there was a couple teams that went down there, but none of them got to play the professional teams so Penn State has an educational agreement with the Jose Marti Center down in Cuba, in Havana, and they've been sending academic stuff. So we went down on academic visas, but, I got, and look, my dad was a military history professor. So I grew up in the Cold War. So like learning about, the Bay of Pigs and then playing in the Bay of we played in the victory of the Bay of Pigs Stadium in Cuba, right? Like, that's cool. And not only that, but I remember also, I spent time in Miami and I played with teammates whose parents, they fled that place, and even people that go back, like I got to go back, they're angry at them for doing it. And so I remember kind of having conversations with some of my former teammates, like, hey, I'm getting ready to take my team. And luckily all of them were like, hey, that's awesome. Do it. But their parents might not have been like that. Their parents might have been like, so, but then, again, like I said, we go to Rio de Janeiro and we're in the Pan Am games and, I tell people this all the time. Like I remember opening up baseball cards and I think it was 1985 and seeing Barry Larkin and Mark McGuire and Billy Swift and Odie B. McDowell wearing Will Clark wearing their USA jerseys from the 84 Olympics. And I was like, I want to do that, and being able to go through opening ceremonies like they do in the Olympics for the Pan Am games, I visited Anne Frank's house, because of baseball, come on. And then, going to Japan and I got to meet John McCain because we were coming back from Rio de Janeiro. We lost in the gold medal game to Cuba. We flew from Rio to Sao Paulo to DC, had like a 3-hour layover there, and then flew to New Orleans. And we were getting on a bus to go to Mobile, Alabama. And I got my bag and I went up I told Mike Weathers, I said, hey, I'll go check to see if the bus is up there. And I go upstairs, I go up to the, where they pick people up. And I look up, there's John McCain. Like I was like, and anyway, so, being able to do stuff like that. And then we're right now in the midst of planning a trip in, not this summer, but the following summer where, we're going to take our team over to Europe and play in Normandy and have our guys visit, the beaches and do the World War II stuff and take them to Bastogne and Anne Frank's house and all that kind of, go visit a concentration camp. And again, like, don't get me wrong, like I want to win a lot more games and for a College World Series, but to be able to use baseball to do stuff like that and help, give these kids those experiences, like it's cool.
It's incredible. I mean, and it's so valuable. I mean, the only times I've ever been out of the country has been for baseball. I mean, I got to go the last 2 years to Ireland and go work with their national team. That's where you got your whiskey. That's where you got that taste for whiskey. I can't confirm or deny that. But awesome. And got went to play in Spain for Gary Adams, who's just the nicest gentleman that has ever lived. And 2009, you guys went and played in was it British Columbia in 2009?
Yep.
And lost to Germany. And I was in Germany in 2009, and they were throwing a party because the German baseball team beat the United States, and they thought that was like they were going to be the up and coming country. And then baseball's cut from the Olympics, and it just it was a huge shot for those guys that they had to take for, getting baseball cut from the Olympics, because then it was going to affect things from the club level all the way down.
Right. Sure.
And I think from that international experience though, like you don't really, until you get out and go see some stuff, like it's a very educational opportunity that I think that's so cool that you're doing for your guys.
I appreciate it. I mean, selfishly, I want to do it too. Sure. It's a bucket list for me to go to Normandy, and it was a bucket list for me to go to Cuba,
I bet.
But, I remember hearing stories about USA teams and, them having to, back really when the relations were really bad and having to land in the cover of darkness, and the planes having to keep their window shades closed. So, because the Cuban government wouldn't allow them to see certain things. So, it's just, it's humbling. It's really, really humbling.
That's cool. I hope that you guys understand the opportunity that's providing for them, because that really is a really a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, it's something really special.
Well, one of the things that I thought was the coolest about, and it was in the closest team and the best team that we've had prior to last year, was that team at Penn State. And one of the reasons why I really feel like they became so close is we go over to Cuba, we're there for a week. Well, the American cell phones don't work over there. They don't have access to email. So they have nothing.
Shut off.
Right. And so everything's shut off, and it forced them to talk to each other. And what they would do, and it was cool, is there was an outdoor little garden patio area at our hotel. So we would practice or play during the day. We would go sit in these academic lectures for 45 minutes and then go see stuff and give the guys some free time to go. And they'd all go buy cigars, and they would all go down to that garden area, and they would just sit there and smoke cigars and hang out and bonded. And, that's cool. That's really,
that's cool, because you don't get an opportunity to do that all the time. You're not going to be able to tell your guys, hey, shut your cell phones off and chat. Because it's fake. It's not authentic.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. I feel like we could probably talk baseball all night and talk about some of the people that we've each come in contact with that have had.
We'll have to do it again, man. You'll have to have me.
Yeah. So I don't see why not. So I do want to kind of get into what you were showing me a little bit earlier that you were drinking. Because I'm not a Scotch. I'm not against it, but I haven't dove in yet. So
that's okay. So this is Balvenie, and it's a very smooth. It's not as peaty, but it's a very smooth. There's notes of caramel and like kind of a butterscotch. But it's a very easy drink. It pairs really good with a cigar. It's funny. I never drank whiskey or scotch until I met my wife's dad, and he got me involved in it. And now it's, I enjoy it. I like being able to have a glass or two on the back porch with the fire on, or Sundays after a home series, being able to just sit and watch Sunday night baseball, maybe with a cigar and everything. But yeah, no, it's relaxing. And you're getting old when this kind of stuff fires you up. But like, I like trying new whiskeys and scotches and trying to see if I can taste those, notes they talk about. And, one thing that my wife's gotten to do, cause, her dad coached at Notre Dame and, so she's been over to Ireland and like, so that's something I'd like to do someday. I'd like to go over to Scotland and Ireland and just do a taste tour and stuff like that. But it is, I enjoy it.
Yeah. If they bring us back, we'll have to get you on that trip over there. Cause
I would love to.
It's such a cool place. I mean,
did you go with, who put that trip on?
We did. So we reached out to, one of our trainers is affiliated with them. He had worked with their team, and it's more, I wouldn't say it's a national, it's their national team. They don't necessarily have like a full on federation like a lot of the other ones do, but they were in the process of moving themselves forward and talking to those guys. I mean, it really is cool what they're trying to do right now because, there's a big Irish influence, whether it's Chicago or East Coast or whatever. So I think they're kind of stuck right now with trying to either figure out if they want to get guys that are native Irish guys, or it's the passport, regulations, I guess you'd call them, or ability to get an Irish passport is fairly easy. I think it's a grandparent needs to be from Ireland. So it can be done. And so if they wanted to, they could probably bring guys who have finished their college eligibility, go over there, play for the national team that has some sort of, Irish lineage, and, probably start building it up that way. One of the things I think they're struggling with is they don't have any native sports that have an overhand throw. It's Gaelic football. It's, it's like soccer and, all of their sports they don't have no overhand throwing motion. So they're good athletes, but the throwing is just actually weird for them. So
sure.
But they've really worked to put things together. I mean, right now they're kind of in a position where they have adults that are trying to play like an adult league, and they're trying to take the best players and make it into the national team. So they've done a good job. Donald Fergus has gone over there. He was at Washington. Now he's with I think the Twins. I mean, they've done a really good job of trying to build up their program. But yeah, one of our trainers knew him and he said, "Hey, do you guys want to go?" And we said, "Let's do it." And
that's awesome. Good
why
for
not?
You.
And then we took last year and did a couple other countries. We hit Budapest and Prague, Vienna, Munich. So got to see a little bit. It was cool.
That is really cool. Yeah. Ireland and Scotland are two that are on my list of places I want to get to.
I started with the Ardbeg, the wee beastie. It's a 5-year-old, and it's nice. Yeah. It's that Isla Scotch, man. It's just it's a campfire, and I kind of dig it.
Yeah, that's a good way. It's really smoky, no doubt.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So I know that there's a Teeling that just came out. It's an Irish whiskey that's peated, so that might be kind of fun and interesting. But I've been sticking with that, and then I go to the Irish whiskey because that's kind of my Irish whiskey and bourbon, my go-tos.
I got you. What's your bourbon? What's your go-to bourbon?
I
like the Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson's good. I kind of mix it up. I try, because there's so many different ones. I've been good with the craft distilleries lately. If I'm going to go with like an everyday just standard, it's the Russell's Reserve 10-year. It's affordable. It's always on the shelf. And it comes from a good company that's been around forever with was a Wild Turkey. Yeah. So I mean, I think they've done a really nice job. They make some good stuff. So that's my go-to every day.
So two buddies of mine, they're really big into bourbon, and I'm trying to find the name of the one they sent me, but I'll have to find it. But I want to say it's like a bourbon like Horse Soldiers, but it's basically. Yeah. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to say it's like a brand or they made it in honor of the horse soldiers that went into Afghanistan. My buddies told me it's fantastic, but it's like I can't get it in PA. So I heard it's really good. Yeah,
I'm trying to get them on. I actually reached out because I read the story about it was the horse soldiers that were on the cliffs of the mountain in Afghanistan, all the green berets, and I'm like, I want to talk to one of those guys.
No doubt. Yeah. So if you I'll be listening to that one. When you do that, man, I'm all in on that. But no, it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy, I'm getting it like kind of like you're starting to kind of try scotches. I'm getting into whiskeys a little bit more. But when the world gets back to normal, we can kind of go out and do stuff. Your best bet is to try to go to a place that has like flights, and you can try some different ones, and you'll get a good taste that way too. So, but I will promise you this, man. When you and I hook up sometime in person, we'll try some.
Yeah, for sure. When you get out to Arizona, if you're out this way, spring training time or anything like that, then we'll make sure we get a couple samples in.
Hey, so you'll appreciate the story. So, for those of you out there who have never been to Camelback, where their spring training site is, it's gorgeous. Like, it's really, really nice. And you guys share it with who?
White Sox.
So 3 years ago, my oldest son is playing in a tournament out there in the summer, and they're playing on the backfields. And this is just my older son. He's a bucket full of confidence. Well, he gets in one and he hits it out, right? And we're driving home. We're driving back to the hotel, and he goes, "Hey, Dad." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Guess what?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Cody Bellinger and I have something in common." I'm like, "Really? What's that?" And he goes, "We both hit one out of Camelback." And I was like, "Okay, big guy, like whatever."
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. You guys were both on the ground, so it's not the same, but I got you. But shoot for it.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. It's a good way to look at that. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on here. I got to tell you, so this is, I think I told you this when we were going back and forth on Twitter. I think it was 2014. I think because you had been at Penn State for a year or two at that point, right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
And I was at UNLV. I think it was when I was at UNLV, but we were in San Jose, staying at the same hotel. Mm-hmm. And I met you very briefly back then, and I thought, man, that guy is super cool. Like, just very generous with your time, and like, I really appreciate that. And it's like kind of everything we've talked about with some of these other guys that have paved the way in college baseball, that have been big names and guys who have done some really cool things. The fact that they're willing to show people, time and the care and consideration, and not just look past them. I thought, like, that was my first year coaching Division I baseball, and I'm like 3 weeks into my career, and I'm meeting the head coach from Penn State, and I was super stoked, and you were super nice. And I really always appreciate that. So you definitely have a Penn State fan in me over here.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I'll get your size, man, and I'll send you out some gear. But no, that means a lot, and I love what you're doing. I was really happy for you guys to break through and win that World Series, but I love what you guys are doing in the player development side, and this is cool. What you're doing here is cool too, and because I think sometimes we get so serious about what we do. Mm-hmm. We sometimes forget about some of the other stuff that we enjoy. And so for you to be able to bring both of these and talk about some cool stuff is really cool. So you got a big fan here too, man.
I appreciate it. It's fun, and it's out of the comfort zone a little bit. And
yes,
like you said, we gotta be able to kind of get back to some of our other enjoyments in life,
And you've taken even more steps, knowing that you're getting samples sent to your house. Like, boom, like you're my guy. Like, that's awesome.
I'm not going to say that the samples or tax benefits didn't have anything to do with it.
Hey, understood. Like, whatever it is, or even if you're just trying to educate America, whatever it is, it's good. So,
awesome. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon for sure.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much.
Yep.